We're back, live at Gray Ghost Vineyards. I got to move it along a little bit. Al said we have a lot to cover, so let me start with a quick little shout out to all of our moms out there. Happy Mother's Day. We miss seeing you all, and maybe you can slide out tomorrow. Hi, John. Thank you very much for your order. We really appreciate you taking advantage of us being able to ship in Virginia. And of course, I'm frightened about my big head on your screen. Hi, Paula. Nice to see you. Hi, Lisa. Are you watching from your cruise tonight? Okay. Oh, wait a second. I have to quit watching me. Hi. Okay, here we go. And I'm turning it around. Hey, Paul. Thanks for being here. And here we have the stars of our show. We are back at Happy Half Hour with Al and Cheryl Kellert. You know what that means. Hey, Charlene and RD. Little bit of applause. Come on, you guys. Hi, Virginia Wine Time. You know you're supposed to be clapping. Excellent, excellent. We are ready for another great show. And you're on, Al.
I'm on? Okay. Well, happy Mother's Day to you all, both you, anyone who's out there that's a mother. We really appreciate it. Thanks for joining us for our 6th consecutive Happy Half Hour at Gray Ghost, coming to you live from Studio One. It's hard to believe that this has been 6 weeks that we've been producing this incredible program. I understand literally hundreds of thousands of people have viewed it and are constantly watching it at all times. It's also hard to believe that these 6 programs have outlasted a lot of major networks' pilot programs, so we're right at the top of the list. What I really want to do is express again our tremendous appreciation for all the support you've given us. You have no idea how important that has been. Now we're going to do something a little bit different at the end of the program, just to give you an opportunity to show us how faithful you've been in watching the program. There's going to be a little quiz. And this quiz, those who get it right are going to have a chance of winning something very special. So we'll be talking about that a little bit later. Now, of course, what is a show without a little humor? A little boy was out fishing with his dad, and he happened to glance over at his dad and said, "Dad, how does a boat float?" Dad said, "I don't know." A few minutes later, he said, "Dad, how does a fish breathe?" "Well, I don't know." Finally, he said, "Dad, what makes the sky blue?" He says, "Well, I don't know." In frustration, the little boy said, "Dad, should I just stop asking questions?" "Absolutely not. How else are you going to ever learn?" Now, for the weekly report from Cheryl, but before we do this, it's very important that we pour our Gewurztraminer 2019 for public health. It's important that Cheryl has both of her hands occupied. And yes, I'm used to that 5th glass showing up just in time. Now, Cheryl. It's time for you once again to update our wonderful fans on the wonderful and exciting things that have been taking place over the past week. Very consistent, Cheryl, a very consistent report and very succinct. Thank you very much. Now, today's happy hour is, oh, this is not good marketing here. Today's happy hour is the 2019 Gewurztraminer. Of course, you're all very familiar with the fact that everything that we present to you is from fruit grown right here on the property. Gewurztraminer is a German grape known for its spicy characteristics. A lot of ginger, pineapple, apricot, and jasmine can be obtained in both the aromas and the taste. It's a great meal wine, often going nicely with hot Thai foods, Asian dishes, a lot of poultry like turkey, duck, a lot of saltier dishes like salty country ham. We personally love it at Thanksgiving. It's just a great turkey dinner. It's just made as an off-dry, and of course, as I've already mentioned, it's 100% estate. So here's to the 2019 Gewurztraminer, which officially is released this weekend for Mother's Day. Wow, that's a great wine, Cheryl. I'm really enjoying this. Now a little bit of a vineyard update. The first 2 sprays have been put on this week, and it's designed to protect the new shoots from a disease called phomopsis. That's a disease that hits the young stems and often causes it to be transferred over to the fruit, and you could potentially lose it. We're doing an early protection too of 2 very critical diseases. One is called black rot, which are little spots that develop on the leaf, transferring to the grapes and causing the grapes to basically turn very hard, black, and fall off. And powdery mildew. Young vines at this stage right now are very susceptible to this disease, which also can ultimately be transferred to the cluster. As far as the weather is concerned, we dodged a bullet last night. I was watching the weather at 2, from 2 to 2:30. The temperatures were hovering right around 38. So as a result, I did not have to light the burn piles, which we have strategically placed throughout the vineyard. However, now we face one more cold night. So although we're in good shape right now, we have a little bit to worry about tonight. Hopefully we can get through it. All of the vines have now budded out. All varieties are out. So that's another reason why we're really taking close care. Does anyone have any questions right now on this particular issue?
No, not yet.
Okay, then we are going to go into a Q&A real quickly on some of the great questions that were asked last week, and we'll try to answer them as much as possible. PJ, you asked, did we bring the Chambourcin and transplant it out here? Yes. Do we use it? No. It has long since been replanted with Cabernet Franc. So Chambourcin is not part of our growing of grapes that we grow out here. The new Saval will be released probably late spring. PJ, thank you very much for your order for 6 of them. I do see a question that just came in.
Yes, we had 2 back-to-back. Any damage from the heavy wind from Roger? And then Lisa is asking if there's any update on the Chardonnay.
As Roger, as far as the winds are concerned, that's what saved me last night. As long as it was breezy, there was not going to be a frost. To answer the question, no damage. The update on the Chardonnay, I'm still holding my breath, but it looks like it's about 60% damage. And again, tonight's going to be a very difficult night for the Chardonnay. Now, Bob and Suzanne out of Oregon, they asked a question knowing that I love Cabernets, but these are going to be directed to Cheryl and Amy. The question was, Cheryl, what's your favorite wine?
I love our Reserve Chardonnay, and I also love our Reserve Cabernet. And what I'm drinking basically depends on what we're having for dinner. But those are my 2 favorite.
Now, the same question was posed to Amy. Amy, would you like to respond?
Okay, I hate to be a little copycat, but the Reserve Chardonnay and Reserve Cabernet are my favorite as well. Much like Stacy Tiley, Lisa Carey, Nancy Stoltz, Sheila Smith, I always have a cold bottle of Reserve Chardonnay in my refrigerator.
Ladies and gentlemen, those that like those 2 wines, you have some real stiff competition. So I would recommend you get it before Cheryl and Amy knock the rest of them off.
Bye now.
Now, another question was asked about, with the virus, is it important to use plastic straws, or should we use the more health or the more environmentally protected straws like glass or metal? I think that's a very good question. For those of you on the West Coast, be use the glass or metal straws, which are recyclable. I think that's very environmentally important. For those on the East Coast, we really don't give a damn. So whatever you want to use, it's up to you. The Midwestern people that are watching, you guys haven't really quite figured it out. Most of you are probably still using paper straws. Now, Cheryl and I did some research over the past week, and one of the problems we found with straws, it was hard to get to the bottom of the bottle to finish it. So keep that in mind when you're using straws.
Bada bing.
Now, Paula, you had a very good question about the quality of wines coming off of vines as they aged. It does make a difference, especially on the reds. The reds do have a tendency to improve as the vines get older. The downside is although the quality goes up, the quantity goes down. As far as the whites are concerned, they're much more forgiving. So as a result, you really don't see a lot of difference in the quality of a young vine versus an old vine. So the real difference comes with the reds. Rulinda, you had a great question about what's the best-selling wine. Well, quite frankly, they all sell out. However, I will say this. If we are producing a wine which is in a small production, they have a tendency to go first. And quite frankly, we have 4 wines that are limited production. They could include Riesling, Cabernet Franc, Gewurztraminer, and Petit Verdot. So those, normally when they're released, don't hang around a long time. A follow-up question was, does the color of the capsule have anything to do with the wine or qualify it as a difference? As a matter of fact, yes. Now, every winery has different approaches to marketing and how they present their packaging. For us, it basically follows this line. The very bright gold capsule, which is strictly reserved for the Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon, is a tin capsule. A very expensive capsule. It'll be the only wine that carries the bright gold. The flat gold capsules are reserved for, yes, our reserve wines. So that includes the Reserve Chardonnay, the Petit Verdot, and the Ranger Reserve. So anytime you see the flat gold capsule, you know that those wines had been either fermented and aged or at least aged in new oak. We also use a white capsule, which is reserved for our regular Chardonnay and our Victorian white. So those are specific to that varietal. We have a silver capsule that is used specifically for the stainless steel fermented wines, which include the Gewurztraminer, Riesling, and Vidal. However, I will throw you a curve on this one. We also use it on the Saval Blanc, which is the only wine that goes into Hungarian oak. Burgundies, those capsules are reserved for what we would call the secondary Bordeaux varietals. So that's the Cabernet Franc and Merlot. The black capsule always goes on the Cabernet Sauvignon, and that's the only wine that gets the black. And then that new, very bright colored red capsule is reserved for the rosés. Now, Cindy, you asked about headaches and with red wines. You may be sensitive to tannins. Normally, if you're sensitive to sulfites, any wine will give you a headache. But tannins seem to affect some people who strictly have a hard time with red wines. Now, one of the best things to do is try some of the softer reds that haven't been in oak that long, or in our case, like our Victorian red, the rosé. Sometimes something like that will help you outgrow it. If there is a product that's online, we tried it specifically because our son was having a hard time drinking reds. And if we figured if it would work for him, we would carry it. It's called Drop It. Clever, isn't that? Now, Drop It is actually a small product that you put 1 or 2 drops in a glass. It does not affect the flavor whatsoever, but will also help you with regards to the headaches that you would get if you're sensitive to tannins or sulfites. However, it's not designed for a hangover. So just as a caution, don't expect it to work there. One question was asked about the coronavirus 19 and whether or not Virginia wineries will ship. Shipping had nothing to do with the virus. That was an option that the individual wineries picked up. We have since decided to go ahead and ship in Virginia, and we will continue to do so once the virus has disappeared. A very thought-provoking question was asked by Dave. What are your thoughts concerning biodynamic growing trends that are seeming to sprout up across the country? This actually predates the organic growing of grapes. And to my personal opinion, it's something a bit like alchemy, which at the medieval times, that was where they claimed you could turn lead into gold. Nature does play a major part in the growing and ultimately production of wine, but I believe very strongly that you can help it via science. Natural yeast versus cultured yeast has always been a dilemma for me. The nice thing about cultured yeast is you know what you're going to get. If you use natural yeast, you have no concept of what that wine is going to taste like or whether or not it's going to actually be something palatable. Organic versus non-organic growing, quite frankly, Virginia is not the climate for growing grapes organically. We have too many diseases that you don't see out in the West Coast, and as a result, we do require certain sprays to protect those vines. And the segment that I thought most interesting was harvesting by the moon cycle. Quite frankly, I much prefer to use chemical analysis of the grape when I pick them, and therefore when we produce our wines, we're producing wines that are really producing quality. Cheryl and I are always looking to improve the wine. Our ultimate goal is perfection. I know we're never going to get there, but it gives us another reason to just keep plugging along and doing our best to make wine. An interesting question by Joe was, what was the most awarded wine you've ever produced? Actually, it's the Adieu, the dessert wine. That's become a real hit and a great award winner for us over the years. However, two wines that come close second are the Reserve Chardonnay and the Reserve Cabernet Sauvignon. These are the ones we're really proud of. When you're going into these national, international competitions, virtually everybody is entering Reserve Chardonnays and Cabernets. And when we're taking double golds, best of classes, and gold medals or platinum medals on these wines, and we're competing against hundreds and oftentimes over 1,000 wines in a particular category, we feel we've accomplished something. So those are two that we're extremely proud of. Now, Karen, you asked probably the toughest question, and I kept this one for the very end, it was, Al, what would you have done if you had not gotten into the wine business? Quite frankly, I have no answer for that. This is the one job that I just absolutely relish, and I cannot see truly doing anything else. I racked my brain on what else I could possibly do, and I can't think of anything. Cheryl and I have really grown to love this job, and it's something that I think we're so tickled at that an option doesn't even make sense. Am I right?
Right. As usual.
Is there any other questions that you can think of right off the bat?
Chris was checking in late on the freeze. So Chris, you're going to have to go back and rewatch this video so that you can hear about the freeze from last night. Next time we'll have you tune in a timely fashion.
Now, I'm going to remind everybody who may have just turned on that there will be a quiz at the end of this program. And the quiz will go into some of the questions associated with previous programs. So stay tuned when this comes to conclusion because it's very important. Now we're going to go into our new research. As you know, Cheryl and I are trying to do something different that will enlighten you a little bit about wine. And this time we decided to take in flavors and aromas and research some of the things that could impact it. Keep in mind that these aromas and flavors are natural to the wine. So what I've done is poured some wines, and what we're going to do is review them. We're going to start with a Cabernet. Now, Cabernets have some interesting characteristics. What I'm going to do is have Cheryl smell this wine and give me a feel for what she feels is in it.
Ooh, I get a lot of plum.
Plum. Isn't that interesting? Sometimes a wine has so many flavors that you swear you can almost see the flavors in the wine. So yes, I too, Cheryl, am getting a lot of plum. Now let's take a look at a white wine. This particular wine was done in stainless steel, and therefore will tend to be a little crisper. Now, what I'm going to do is allow Cheryl to smell this and tell me what type of fruit she's picking up in this wine.
Ooh, it just reeks of lemon.
Lemon. Oh my gracious, I pick it up too. Again, this is such a vibrant aroma that I can almost swear I can see the aroma with my own eyes. Now let's try a wine that has been aged in oak and give you some indication of what oak can do for a wine. This is a Chardonnay that was aged in oak and then filtered. But the oak really has a tremendous impact on this wine. So Cheryl, what aromas are you picking up in this wine?
Reminds me of Hawaii. I think it's coconut.
Coconut. My word, I'm picking it up too. In fact, it almost smells almost like it's shredded coconut,
Yes.
Cheryl.
Yes.
And again, it's almost a visual thing. It's hard to believe that this coconut is natural to the wine. It was never added whatsoever. And then the last wine we're going to taste is a French wine. French wines oftentimes can be earthy. And what we're going to do is take a little bit of a smell of this wine and see whether or not we can detect some of the tones that are coming off of a French wine.
I get tobacco notes.
Tobacco. Oh my gracious, so do I. Now, interestingly enough, wait a minute. Can you detect what tobacco smells you're getting?
Why, it's Lucky Strike.
Lucky Strike. What are the odds? I would have picked Salem, but I think you're right. Now I am picking up a little bit of the filter in this particular wine, but that's natural again. And again, the visual nature of this, it's strictly by accident. Now, I hope by taking you into this and showing you how the visual characteristics can actually come across, now it's time for seriously. Truly, one of the most asked questions we have in the tasting room is how do you get the flavors in the wine? We don't. The grapes do. This is a little humorous way of talking about something that's extremely important, and that's the flavor of a wine. Wine is the only product I know of where descriptors are used from other foods, and these are natural flavors that are coming from the berry. If you were to take a berry and you cut it in half, the core of the berry will always have a seed. The tissue surrounding the seed is really nothing more than sugar waters and acids. It's the tissues that are directly under the skins that are giving you the flavors to the wine. So it's the skin and the tissue there that is impacted by barrel aging, by the selection of yeast that's used, and of course the growing location. All of this impacts the wine. So when you're tasting wine and you taste pear, or you taste black cherry, or you taste the citrusy characteristics of a white that's been fermented very crisply. That is actually the grape that's doing it. It has nothing to do with additives. Are there any questions about flavors and aromas? Well, again, I'm going to remind everybody that we're coming very close to the questions, to the quiz that's going to be coming up very shortly. But before we do that, I want to do a real quick part 4 of family history. One thing I failed to talk about last week was some of our private life that we had in the first 10 years from 76 to 86. I should have mentioned that during that period of time, Cheryl was not only the organist for our church, but also taught preschool and quite frankly was an incredible full-time mom. And I couldn't think of a better weekend to actually say that. I had an opportunity to direct the choir, teach a little Sunday school, and of course, I carried on my sports side by being a player manager for the church softball team, which I don't think during my entire length of time ever had a winning season. We went in '81 to the western regions of the Postal Service where I was sent out, and at that time Cheryl with the children came out and spent 2 months. That's when we started visiting Napa and Sonoma, and they were in the same position we are today here in Virginia. That's when we got the bug. That's when the dream started. We came back, planted our first vines in '81, and the first wine was produced in '84. Now, I mentioned last week that we had an initial festival. It was in our backyard. It was limited to about 50 people who were in attendance. It was truly an incredible event. The wines were absolutely terrible, but the festival was free, so nobody had any problem coming. We started looking for the property in '83, purchasing it in '86, and moved out to Gray Ghost, the Amosville site, in December. That's when we moved the plants. The kids were very instrumental in the development. Of course, Amy started her UVA career in '92, completing her degree in '96. She joined Gray Ghost full-time in the fall of '96, and that's the same year that Al went full-time in the Prince William County Fire Department. So it does give you some indication of the type of a life. Next week, what we're going to do is talk a little bit about the growth of the family. One of the things I wanted to also touch base on real quickly is fun facts, but in parentheses I put close calls. Some of the things that happened to us were just blessings. One was when we got ready to harvest our first grapes, we didn't have our license from the ATF. And on August 19th, 1993, we got a call from the East Coast agent that indicated our license had been approved. And we started harvesting within about a week after that. That's how close we came. We had a wonderful experience with Rich from RC's AC, who still works with us on our cooling and air conditioning systems. The day we started harvesting, he was up at 3:30 in the morning, still installing our chilling system, which we used that day for harvest. That's how close we cut it. Also, the initial must pump was brought in from Germany. When we started to turn it on, it wouldn't work. Our contact here in the U.S. called Germany, and they just merely said, well, obviously they're the Americans, they don't know how to make it work. He was German. He let them know he can't make it work. As it turned out, they had installed the wrong worm. So the worm for the must pump was overnighted from Germany and was installed within 24 hours of our harvesting of our first crop. Finally, the other close call came in 1999 when we were building our back building where the barrel room is. That particular day, we were talking to our contractor, and I casually mentioned to him, do we have insurance on the building? And he said, oh, I forgot to get it, I'll get it on immediately. That next day, we had a micro storm where a mini tornado came through and took the building down. That's how close we came to losing it all. Now, what I'm gonna do before we start talking about the quiz, oh, we do have a question.
Yes, David Bulova asked, what is this craziest flavor profile you've ever tasted in a wine?
I think probably the funniest one was early on. Cheryl and I were visiting in the Finger Lakes, and we happened to go into this winery, and the winemaker was just absolutely elated. He said he was picking up some incredible geranium in his wines, and Cheryl and I tasted them, and sure enough, we could detect geranium. So of course, like typical novices, we bought the geranium wine because we were so proud that we could detect the flavor. Only after a lot of research did I realize it was a major flaw, but such is life. We learn as we go. Any other questions before we go on?
Claire wants to know who the artist is for the new crowd members.
Oh, I forgot to introduce those. Yes, you're looking at him. We did increase the new crowd by about a third. And the reason we did that is Cheryl and I were feeling very comfortable with the small group. We wanted to make sure that we could still handle our composure as the crowd increased. So that's why we increased it. You will notice that the two new members of the cast are carrying Gray Ghost wines, and we're very proud of that. Now, before I go on, I'm going to have Cheryl Amy give you a real quick update of what's happening with the governors and how that will impact you.
Hey kids, I'm back again, and we got some good news. We're going to be able to do some opening next weekend. In addition to praying for no freeze tonight, we're also going to need you to pray for weekends filled with gorgeous weather and sunshine. Because for phase 1, all of our business will have to be conducted outdoors. So we, obviously are hoping for pretty days. Otherwise, we just recommend you wear your heavy coats, you bring your umbrellas, you do what you need to do to have a good time at Gray Ghost, because we will make sure you have a good time at Gray Ghost. So please be watching the emails I'm going to send out this week. Please be watching our Facebook page, all that good stuff, because kids, it is go time on Friday.
Now for the quiz, what you all have been waiting for. I am going to give you 3 multiple choice questions. I am going to read them, and they will show up in writing on the screen. The answers were all given to you on previous happy hours. You are going to be asked to submit your responses via email to Amy. All correct responses will become eligible for the drawing of the winner. Not the winter. Let's hope we're not getting winter. And the drawing will take place live next week on this show. The winner will receive, Cheryl, what will the winner receive?
The winner will receive a bottle of 2019 Gewurztraminer. And Al, how many minutes do they have to respond?
You have, once the show is over, once this program is we sign out, you will have 20 minutes to get your responses to Amy. So be sure you pay attention and you respond as quickly as you can via email to Amy. Now, the first question that's going to be posed to you is as follows. What was the first winery in California that Al and Cheryl visited? Was it Robert Mondavi Winery, J. Lure Vineyards, Sebastiani Winery, Behringer, Kendall Jackson, or none of the above? Amy is going to hold that up for a couple more seconds so you can read it. All right. Now, question number 2. How many vines were in the original planting at the Dale City home of the Kellerts? Was it 25, 50, was it 100, 160, or 200, or none of the above? Again, Amy will hold that up for a couple more seconds. And the last question is for all you romantics out there. I can't think of a better question to ask you on Mother's Day. When was Al and Cheryl's first date? Was it June 20, 1967? May 13, 1968? July 20, 1969? November 27, 1971, or none of the above? Well, I wish you all the very best luck in answering these questions. Once again, you'll see the location of where you respond, and Amy is going to hold this up while I give you the final little joke of the day to close off the program. This is referencing 3 explorers. One came from France, one came from England, and of course we had one gentleman from the New York. They were exploring in Africa where they were caught by an African tribe. While they were being held, the chief of the tribe went up to them and indicated that each was going to be killed and made into a canoe. However, they did have the choice of how they would die. So the Frenchman went first, and he said, "I take the poison." He immediately grabbed the bottle, threw it back, screamed at the top of his voice, "Vive la France," and died. The British gentleman then said, "I will take the pistol." He immediately was handed the gun. He put it to his head and said, "God save the Queen," and pulled the trigger. The New Yorker then said, "I will take a fork." And the chief said, "A fork?" He said, "Yes." So he handed him a fork, and he immediately began to pierce himself in a rapid succession all over. And as he did it, he looked at the chief and said, "Screw your canoe."
Bada bing, bada bing.
With that, again, thank you so much for joining us for these, the 6th of the series, Happy Hours, and may all of you have a wonderful week, and mothers, you have a wonderful Mother's Day.
You have 20 minutes to send in your answers to replies@grayghostvineyards.com to be entered into our drawing. Tune in next week as we enjoy the 2017 Petit Verdot. And finally, we'd like to thank you for once again tuning in to the Gray Ghost Vineyards Happy Half Hour. Happy Mother's Day, everyone.
Your 20 minutes begins now.